Hi,
Yay!
welcome back to Crossroads of Cognizance, where we are eyeball deep in the shadow of Mercury Retrograde. Yay!
And you just
I
invoked our Lord and Savior on your technical problem too.
I don't think he can help. I mean,
No.
golly, I if it's not the phone, if it's not personal Facebook issues, if it's this is a
Yeah.
weird time. I don't like to dive into a life is happening to me kind of moment, but I feel like I'm here.
Life is happening for you, Dahlia. It's happening for you. Hi,
Yes.
Wolf. Dahlia, this is my really dear friend, Eric Wolf. He has been working magically with me for around 22 years, 23
Oh,
years or
wow.
so. Yeah, he's
Wow.
my buddy.
Well, hi, Eric
So,
Wolf.
Wolf, Dahlia, Wolf. So, Dahlia, I need you to juggle for just a second while I go share this, okay?
Oh, okay.
Be
So,
fascinating.
all right. All right, be interesting. What do I got? Um this week on today's broadcast, we'll be talking about everything that happened within the last week. It's of course harmoniously meshed. We can't pre-rehearse these kinds of things cuz the universe will be what it will. However, on the topic of connections, timing, self-care, I mean, here we are again. And for us being a metaphysical, witchy, energy based broadcast, the real world comes crashing in really quickly still. So if you are operating in spirituality and you want some real talk around what happens, how to manage it, we offer you our examples, and we want to hear from you in the comments section. So again, welcome back. Hello, Gladys, and all of our beloved community. um,
So what
and
she's
here we
saying
are.
is, look at how we screw up and do differently.
Yes, choose differently. My God. All
But I have
right.
shared us all over the world. We should be hopefully picking up a few people here and there. And if not, it's
Yeah,
recorded.
it is. So catch us on the replay, join at any time,
Yay.
throw in your thoughts and feelings. We're seeing you on YouTube, we're seeing you on Facebook. So just let us know you're here and join in
Yeah.
on the conversation. So um when Katrina and I, we connect for a few minutes before the broadcast, and we're like, hey, what's going on? Catch up, as if we would, as friends do. And the first thing was like, what's going on with you? Katrina asked. And I'm like, well, there was a lot. This was another heavy week. I feel
I
like I
think
say that
what you
every
actually said
broadcast.
was, well, you've seen my eggs.
Yes. So, for those who don't know, Katrina is my beloved healer, and will do distance Olympias on me and I highly recommend seek out her services because you won't regret it. They're informative, and you feel the shift and the change. When I feel foggy, I mean, I just need a good egg rub, and I can't go to California, so this is the next best thing. And yeah, my eggs are a hot mess by the end of the week. By the end of the month. She does them monthly for me. We're going to talk about switching to weekly at this stage. So when you're holding space for other people, it doesn't mean you can't negate self-care. I mean, Katrina, I'm sure you've seen in Reiki training, they're like, yeah, the energy cleanses you while you're working. And it's like, okay, but yeah,
That's
but that doesn't
adorable.
mean right. That's real cute. When you start doing the heavy lifting, it's not
Yeah.
going to hold you down.
That's like saying the water cleanses the pipes as it goes through, There's still a lot of corrosion that builds up.
Right. Right. Corrosion is a great word. Um, and you still have to manage that corrosion. You still have to make sure that you're putting in the patches, you're replacing the pipes and things like that. And so um, that's the story of. But it led to not only seeking Katrina out as I do regularly, I started bringing productivity into my life, which sounds really icky and non woo woo. But as a flighty woo woo person, it is the perfect solution. So we got on the topic of like, what does that look like? And I had done some master classes and was like, you know what? My calendar is going to be full. like moment to moment, but it's going to be full of, okay, I have between clients, so you know, meditating or whatever it takes has to be there. Katrina, you sharing your overload and on things that were not on your calendar.
Mm-hmm. What I found is that I have remote work that I do for people, and that's a little bit of a luxury for me because I don't have to have a specific appointment with the person. In fact, for me, remote work works better if they don't know when I'm coming in, because if they know, hey, at 8 p.m., Katrina's going to access and start cleaning, they're sitting there like this, just sort of, where's it coming? When's it coming? Whereas if I can just sneak in there and just get it done, it's a little bit easier for both of us because I'm not having to work against their attention and they're not having to sit there wondering if they're being receptive enough or whatever it might be. And so I don't schedule that. And so what I was doing is I had scheduled clients and I would say, okay, I've got this remote work that I'll just work into the day. I'll just get that done in the day. And I was end up working until 1 or 2 in the morning because I wanted to get these folks done and the time just wasn't there. So I'm finding, like you, I'm having to schedule almost every single thing that happens or any productivity related thing that happens. And when that is scheduled, it's done. You don't get to do more. You don't get to work stuff in. And this isn't just a healer thing like you and I are managing. Anyone who is having to engage productivity in some way needs to be really mindful about where their energy is going. Like Debbie and Gladys, they both work full-time jobs that are
Mm.
demanding and then come to my shop and put in easily 20 or more hours a week.
Oh wow.
And I can see this, they're there helping clients, they're there doing healings on people. Debbie's rearranging the shop. Gladys is doing mediumship work and working on product. And so, I'm watching these people just bust their complete asses. And
Yeah.
it's a strain, it's hard work.
And
So
then going
we
home
really,
and managing their personal lives, right?
yes, there's still a house to clean. There's still animals to take care of. And we overload constantly. I
Yep.
think most people overload constantly. And that's detrimental to health. We have to, all of us, manage that better.
Absolutely. And it's there, right? So I think it's pretty consistent to say that woo-woo people don't like structure. Um, however, you know, you can say schedule a phone call with somebody. You don't necessarily have to tell them if you feel like, I may not have the bandwidth and I don't want to disappoint them. Put it on your calendar just to sort of, it'll be spontaneous for them, but you don't miss the opportunity. I mean, how many, again, I will say we are in this stage of the year where people are kind of leaving this earth
Mm-hmm.
more on a more frequent basis than is, COVID related. And we don't want to miss those opportunities. I missed some text messages yesterday for somebody that I was like, man, they told me they may be in a bad way and I wanted to reach out and I did not put it down. And so all the shiny squirrels ran past me, caught my attention, and before I knew it, it was 11. And
Well,
that
and
wasn't
something that
ideal.
Eric Wolf told me easily 15, 20 years ago that has really stuck with me is he said, people think about harvest time in terms of reward. They think about that food coming in from the garden. They think
Hmm.
about in cusp, which is our spiritual path. They think about getting the things they've worked on energetically all year long. What they don't consider is that harvest is hard, sweaty work. I
Hmm.
mean, that's the time of the year when you are working the hardest.
Yep.
And it really shows that until the world starts to slow down for winter, everything is nuts. And we're in the middle of that right now. We're getting ready to come up on second harvest in a day or two.
Yeah.
And for Mabon, and it's just crazy busy. So people have to modulate. They have to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad you brought up the harvest piece. It reminded me, you asked me before the broadcast, did I do anything that was not work related this weekend? And I did. I remembered something. So
Good.
I engaged with gratitude with my partner. I had just, if you get a chance and you pop over to Katrina's website, um, what you will find is that she has fixed candles, and I had purchased some gratitude candles, and I was just like, you know what, we're going to do this gratitude thing, and it has been very grounding and shifting, it has not been about gratitude for the healing work or gratitude for any work related things. So like, that was the step away, that was part of a step away, among other things. So yay, I did something that wasn't work
Right.
related.
Gratitude is a huge energy, and it's one that most people fail to tap into. And in fact, it's interesting you mentioned that, because Eric and I have a giant rock that's on our entry table at the shop. And that's
Mhm.
kind of our little impulse buy section. It introduces new items that we've brought in. And we always have a candle in a hole in that rock. And the candle we were burning this week was gratitude. And a technique that's really amazing is called the heart activation technique.
Okay.
And what you do is you take your two hands, one on top of another, you put it where you perceive your heart to be, wherever you think that is. You take a few deep breaths, feeling your heart beat under your hands, and you focus on one thing you're grateful for. Any one
Mhm.
thing. You breathe in for a count of 11, you hold for a count of 11, and you let out for a count of 11. And you do that 3 times for that one thing. And you choose a total of 3 things. So you're doing 9 rounds of the breath, and each of those is dedicated to gratitude for the one thing that you're focused on at that time, for a total of 3 things. And that really puts you in an energy of gratitude. It's an amazing
Absolutely.
process and opens the heart.
It sounds amazing. There was a class I had participated in for Ho'oponopono, and the
Mhm.
gentleman spoke about doing that level of breath work. And I think that when I hear you talking about gratitude, one of the things that I notice with that breath work in particular is like, when you are extending your breath that much, if you've not done that before, it can be a little jarring. And when you go to receive that breath again after holding empty for 11 seconds, 10 or 11 seconds, it's like, it's like
Mhm.
it's impactful. It brings you literally back to life. And then even as you get used to doing it, you can get into this, like, you know what, I had a choice in continuing my life today, and what else did I do to perpetuate that? How did I connect and link up with that? And again, if you're not, and don't lie to yourself like this Virgo does and say, oh, it was work. um but actually diving into the things that, bring you joy, bring you love. And then that gratitude piece amplifies the harvest, right? Like, it can only bring you more.
And that's why, even though the premise of it is misfounded and erroneous, the idea of Thanksgiving, where we gather together with our families and the people we love and care about, and share a meal, a bountiful meal,
And an argument.
and arguments and pie. You know, it's the idea of that sharing time at a time of harvest is a really lovely concept. One of the things that unfortunately gets lost in non-Christian homes is the idea of saying grace and of
Hmm.
observing the food that's in front of you and giving thanks that you have food to eat, and to all that provided this food for you, including the person who cooked it, who's probably sitting at the table, we hope, and not in the kitchen. But that graceful act of being grateful for every single meal is a really lovely process.
Absolutely. Have you dived into, when I got on my spiritual path and started to consider energy and things like that, did you ever come across things where they talked about the suffering that takes place within the food, how you want to, like, kind of say thank you to the chicken for whatever it went through just to be on your plate, and that sort of, um alters the suffering that you may consume in some way, shape, or form. I mean, it's this
Interesting.
right, but is that something you've ever done?
I have not done it. I have seen it promoted in certain religious processes that are ritualistic in nature,
Okay.
and giving thanks for a sacrifice, for instance, and almost embodying the animal while it's being sacrificed,
Oh.
so that you are feeling it along with them and saying thank
Mhm.
you for this. And it's done in a very humane way. I've never, witnessed anything like that. I've not done that myself, but I have witnessed it. And I've
Okay.
never witnessed it in a place where it was not done more humanely than any meat that you would get from the grocery store. But I have seen that process where the thanks is given. I have not seen that in terms of mundane practice of giving thanks. It was just more about the people. That's Gladys has mentioned Santeria, and that's one of the practices that I had seen this in.
Hmm.
So, we really tend to, especially we woo woo healers and practitioners, tend to look down on the different trads that condone animal sacrifices. Oh, how primitive they are. And yet, when you look into that process, it's a very elaborate and spiritual process that happens. So
Right.
that's one place I've seen it. I have not seen it as far as, hey, let's all sit around the table and hold hands and talk about how much our chicken suffered.
Fair, fair.
Not that I'm saying that's wrong. I just haven't done it.
So I think, for me, like I said, it was sort of a junior or freshman sort of junior spirituality thing. And I have come across it in, I used to think it was sort of maybe like a consistent, like, hey, it's a good idea, but I have since sort of pulled back on that and offered that as an option for people who seem overly, like, they're seriously energetically sensitive
Hmm.
to even who was preparing the meal and what emotional space they were in.
Now,
And
that's a big thing with kitchen witchery. When I teach my kitchen witchery classes,
Mhm.
I teach about rage cooking, and I teach about how the mood that you're in as you cook imbues an energy into the food that people are
Absolutely.
consuming. It's a toxicity that's going in there, and so we're responsible and accountable for the type of mindset and mood that we have when we go into the cooking process. And also, when we're eating out, when we're dining out, we need to be very careful, because that food is subject to the person pulling it out of the freezer, the person cooking it, the person serving it,
Yep.
whether or not you were snappy about the fact that your eggs were cooked wrong. You gotta be
So in
nice
other
to each
words,
other.
go when the restaurant first opens for the evening before
And
they've had a shitty
yeah,
time.
also, and if it's, but at the same time, they could be coming from a shitty experience at home and didn't have time to get into the flow of what they're doing. So you're really doomed either way. I think the best thing, having been a server, the best thing you can do is to go in open and smiles. Don't expect mishap. Don't expect problems. Be kind to your server. Know what your server is and isn't able to control
Right.
about that process, and just be good to them. You
Yeah.
don't, even if they're being crabby, just say, wow, it looks like you're having a really tough day. Or just, and it's the same thing for the person checking you out at the grocery store
Yeah.
or anywhere. Just if you see somebody that's just really scowling or not in a pleasant place, just say, man, it looks like you're having a rough day. I hope somebody really comes along and adds some joy to your day today. And if
Right.
that were me, if somebody said that to me, I'd be mortified. Oh my gosh, my mask slipped.
Right. Hold on. Let me just pick up my
Right,
things.
it's here somewhere.
Oh yeah. Yeah. My partner excels at that. And I was like, I think you're here to teach me that, because sometimes the mask does slip and the RBF comes out and it's like, I promise I'm not mad at you. Like, I'm just have nothing going on.
Have
So
you ever been out to dinner with somebody that embarrassed you because of the way they treated the wait staff?
oh yeah.
I
I mean, who
hate that.
hasn't?
I hate
Yeah.
that. That for me is such a deal breaker. If you are shitty to your waiter, the way that your esteem with me falls is like falling off the Empire State Building. It's so boom,
Well,
boom.
and it's they're essentially a stranger. Like if I guess it calls into question, like if you are going to be that way to somebody you don't know,
Yeah.
how are you going to be with me in, in my hardest moment? So loving the cat, but
That would be mama. Yep. And it really is about, is this $12 hamburger worth making somebody feel belittled in some way?
right, they are not truly there to serve you. They're offering a service, and that's it.
Yeah, they're doing their job too. And they might be doing a sucky job. I mean, being a waiter was not my favorite vocation, ever. But it was one I tried to do with love and to be mindful of how I was serving somebody's food. And for some people, this is their date night. They haven't been out together alone for months. And so this is important to them. It is more important to them than it is to me. And I had to recognize that. But I think that just speaks to, in general, as people, we need to go out into the world in a way that's loving and kind. And if we run into some people that are crabby and assholes, just, let them slide. Bye.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not up to us necessarily to respond, but just to move on.
No, but you can, I mean, by being kind, essentially you're like you said, you're smoothing your way through that process. You don't have to stop. You don't have to be the agent of karma.
No, not this time.
So, with regard to the things that we are implementing as far as productivity and making sure that we're connecting with people and all of these things, I'm recognizing as we're having this conversation how much it is an opportunity. Like everything is reflective, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you are finding yourself, and I'm saying this to me too, if I find myself in a place where it is chaos and I'm not really making time to connect with people or the things that I need to do, am I actually connecting with myself in the ways that
Mm,
are healing?
very true. That
Right.
is so true. And we get so lost, especially when we are lost in productivity. We
Mhm.
get so accustomed to head down, facing the books or whatever it is we're having to do, that we aren't connecting. We're disconnecting.
Right.
And there's a time and a place for disconnecting, certainly. But we're losing days every
Yeah.
time we go to sleep. That's
Yeah.
another day we will never get back. And
And I
how do we
think
want to spend that?
it can also be masked by saying like, oh well, I'm connecting to spirit. And it's like, wait, but when's the last time you actually connected with yourself? And instead of
Yeah,
going up and out, when's the last time you went deep and in?
up and in. Yeah,
Yeah. So
I agree. Eh, really?
did they see
No,
my butt last time?
yeah. No, I completely agree with that. And I think that we have to figure out, you know, what are our hours worth to us and
Mhm.
how do we want to spend our lives? And, our time, our energy, our connection, our love is like currency. And we have to decide, where do we want to spend it? What are we missing by being so damn productive? And, I'm a Virgo as well. And so I totally understand where you're coming from. It's hard for me to go to bed knowing I left something undone that needed to be done. But at the same time, sometimes I just want to sit with my friends or my husband. I mean, after we had a really busy weekend this weekend, and when Debbie and Gladys were leaving on Sunday, I said, I feel like I didn't see you the whole
Yeah.
weekend, but I was with you the whole weekend. But we were running and teaching and doing classes and helping clients and that sort of thing. And we didn't have time to sit down and really connect as friends. And we all missed that. We all wanted to plug in that way. And there was an empty feeling because that didn't
Yep.
happen. When
I
I
had
had times because of the fire that I wasn't able to have this with you, there was a part of my spirit that was really sad and empty and missing that. I like to connect with my people.
right. And you've slowed down, and like you said, it's the speed of the productivity. And I recognize that this weekend as well. I had an opportunity to do some networking with a great group. And these individuals really filled my soul and my spirit in a way that I was like, I don't know if I've had this since January of 2020.
Wow.
Yeah. I thought I am an introvert through and through. I will talk to you. I will find it. I was a receptionist. I know how to talk to people. And it's genuine, but I love my cave time. And I think
Mhm.
I mistook that. And when I got out and I actually started connecting in the ways that you're describing, I was like, you know, having great conversations and connecting with people. I was like, I think I missed this. And so doing what I can to get back to that outside of work, again, it's going to
Mhm.
go on the calendar.
What you were
Um,
talking about in regard to connection and being an introvert, which I also am a cave person. I'm a big time hermit. And I have had times in my past where I went literally years and only interacted with my family. I didn't leave the
mm,
house. It wasn't an agoraphobic thing. It was a matter of I don't care what's going on out there. There's nothing out there that's more important than me having my quiet alone time. And one of the things that you brought up when we were having our pre-show discussion is the idea of soul contracts.
yes.
And one of the biggest guides I had for managing soul contracts was the book The Celestine Prophecy by James Redfield.
Okay.
And I loved how they talked about how certain people are meant to meet at certain times and have certain conversations and elevate each other in certain ways. And one of the themes that has been coming up for me in healings, not as much in discussion on the sales floor, is that idea of the soul contract. And so it was great you mentioned that, and how we are meant to connect with certain people for certain purposes, but often we misunderstand what that purpose is. Are you seeing that
Right.
as well?
Absolutely. And not only what that purpose is, but for how long. We talked about this in the big let go. There is a period of time where there is an ending, and societally we expect that that ending is going to be horrible and they're going to wrong us and do these things. And then sometimes it is just I know this is off. And because you're not a horrible person, I don't want to let you go, but you have to. The paths diverge. You're going in different directions. You've made statements and claims to the universe that this is my intention. I want positive people in my life, and I want to bring in my soul tribe and my community. And then you look around and you're trying to fit that large tall order into the mundane life you had with the same people, and now there's friction. And you forget, you're like, why is this happening? Aren't you coming with me? And they're like, no,
We
no.
didn't ask for that trip. We didn't ask to go
Right.
there. So stop dragging us there.
So my book was Sacred Contracts by Carolyn Mace. And that book helped me get through my separation and eventual divorce previously, because I could not fathom why I would enter into this contract with this person to have some of the circumstances that we've had. And this is not to say, I think I've said this on the show, that you are a slave to um, suffering. Like, your soul contract was written out that every relationship you have will be horrible. I kind of am of the belief that we say, I want to learn these things. And when one or both parties don't choose the learning option, then you have suffering and discord and harm, physical, mental, emotional.
I think that's likely true. And I think that when we are having changes in relationships, looking for the lesson and that learning place is probably about the last thing on our minds.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. You can get lost in it. You could want to enjoy it. You can, and then it goes south, and then we got to play
Mhm.
catch up with these lessons. And it's We have a recommendation, Heather Lynn. Okay, Roxanne, are you saying that's a good author? Maybe get back to us on that. But yes, with regard to soul contracts, there isn't always a level of toxicity before the break happens, but there
Mhm.
is a poisoning that's happening or an energy leakage that
Mhm.
comes with staying in something that you know is diverging. And so then
Yeah, I
you
agree.
find yourself at work and you're like, why do I, now not want to be here? Or you avoid going home because you want to double down into work. Or many of the other circumstances that can happen. Check your connections and your relationships to see, am I oozing energy in too many different directions? I was having
Yes.
this discussion earlier. I wonder if this is something you've seen energy wise when you're working on people. Um, I was working on a couple individuals, and they were split among many different timelines. It was like they had so many different choices among them.
Mhm.
And I first started seeing this a couple months back. So many choices among them that it was let. Some of us do that and it's in our head, right? Like it
Mhm.
stays there and it's like, oh, I could pick that. These individuals were actually investing in trying to have everything at once. And so it was like watching a piece of or a chunk of their energy in this field, on this timeline, in this space. And then when they came to me, they were like, I don't feel like I'm completely here.
Yeah, I
And
see that
then
a lot. Yeah.
in my practice, pushing them like they're like this, and then kind of bringing it all back to center, was enough for the moment, and then asking them to reevaluate so they didn't split apart again. You said you have seen that?
Absolutely. There's actually a formation in the egg that shows up when somebody has split their attention and their energy and left part of themselves in the past or in another place or another dimension.
Mm.
And what you were speaking to is very true in that it's not just about interpersonal relationships. We also have soul contracts with jobs that we're doing,
Hmm.
houses we live in, um, mindsets, family relationships. It's not just love relationships in terms of romance, and that tends to be where we go. I've had to split from friends that I really cared about because we were just not on the same page and we were not going in the same direction. It was creating more and more friction as we tried to still walk the same path. It's as though we're yelling at each other as our paths are going further and further apart.
Mm.
And so it was just becoming more and more stressful. But I'm definitely seeing this rise in people having to make choices about what they're doing with that relationship and
Yep.
what is it doing to them, as you discussed, to continue that relationship even if both are well meaning. How is it how is it impacting your life to remain in that relationship? And if you are able to manage that, if you are able to stay in the relationship with that person and make adjustments so that it works, that's fine. Nobody ever says you have to let this person go.
Right.
You get to choose. Now, that other person can say, you have to let me go.
Yes.
But no one from the
Absolutely.
outside, no healer or anyone can say,
No reader.
you have to do this.
Right.
It's saying this is a detriment and you need to manage it in some way.
Absolutely. And even as healers, one of the other great lessons that you've taught me as a mentor, like, come to the table, and if you are supporting another person, you can't assume that that person's journey is to let that person go. You may see that it's toxic and present the information, but we are just vessels. So if you are out there operating as a support system for somebody, you're not hurting them into a choice. You're saying, okay, where are you at now? And okay, do we just need to scrub you down, or are you ready for the deeper stuff? But we don't have to push to make the move. Like Katrina said about management, if you feel realized in your ability to move into another job, but it's clear the contract for that job is up, but you're just like,
Mhm.
no, I don't have any other options. And that's something you've settled in. What are you doing to refill your spirit outside of work? You
Right.
know, are you going on walks? Are you separating yourself from work and not doing it at home? All of so it's a journey and a process, but it can't be rushed or forced.
That's very true. And we really have to force ourselves to be very mindful and self aware, and also be very clear on what our expectations are in relationships with other people. I think that the biggest problem with relationships comes when expectations are put on another person without them knowing, or
Yeah,
without their ability to fulfill those expectations. And so
absolutely.
that creates a lot of friction and hardships in even healthy relationships, where I expect this person who's my friend to treat me as well as I treat them.
Hmm.
And that might not be your dynamic. A lot of us, when we get into relationships, overgive because we don't trust ourselves to be enough. And so we start setting up the dynamic that we are that person they can't live without.
Hmm.
We're indispensable. And
Job
so we
security.
Yeah, yeah. So we tend to overgive, and then we want that back in return from them. And the unspoken message is, "Hey, I didn't sign on for that." That's not the dynamic we set up in our relationship. So we have to be very clear in what our expectations are, even with ourselves, because a lot of times we don't even realize we're doing that to people.
I'm very much having those conversations at the shop about capability. You know, it isn't necessarily, we tend to say as a society and as a culture, if somebody does this, then they love me. But if they don't, then they don't love me. And some it's just you're dealing with incapability. One of the people I was with, one of my previous partners, would always be like, "Oh my God, you are so inconsistent." I'm consistently inconsistent. Like surprises everywhere. It's going to be different kinds of love. But that didn't feel safe for that person. They needed what I was old, they liked this thing that I did and they wanted me to keep doing that thing. And it was almost toxic for them to be for toxic
Mhm.
to them from me to receive differently and to not know what that reception was going to look like until it was there. And so, even in the best of cases, when you're dealing with capability, you don't dive into that space of it's not about did they love you, did they not, but asking, okay, are they loving me the way that they show love? And is it enough for me? Is it digestible for me? And if it's not, really being brutally honest, strange place to be in, and to have conversations about like intention
Mhm.
and expectation is strange territory because it does open the door for rejection, or realizing, hey, this was a situation like Katrina was saying that I signed up for. um but is it worth it to slowly poison yourself
Yeah.
for decades, only to find out at the end that you were dying a slow death the whole time? I
That's
hate to
so
be so
true.
extreme, but it feels that way.
Wolf brings up a very important point when we're talking about separating out work from our other energy outputs. And so many of us are now working from home.
Mhm.
That when we have switched from office work to home based work, we tend to not see, and this is just a sidebar from what we're talking about, we tend to not see the end of the day. We're thinking, well, I can just work a little bit longer and get this done, and then I don't have to mess with it tomorrow. And that was how, when we were living at the shop for a while, I I had the same problem. And it was one of my freshman students who said, "Hey, how are you then separating out your life, your two lives?" And I realized I wasn't.
Mm.
And so it is super important that our expectations also look back at us for what do we expect from ourselves. And like you were mentioning before, connection isn't just with other people, it's with ourselves. And expectations don't just go to other people, they go to ourselves. And we have to ask, am I expecting more of myself than I would another person? Would I be more gracious and sympathetic to another person? And I was thinking so much about when you were talking about the love languages.
Yes.
And how vital that is. What a piece of psychological, not only benefit, but torture was that premise of love languages, because it really forced us to look at the idea that one person's expression of love is not the same as the other one, and they might be completely incapable of speaking your love language at all.
Right. Absolutely. I know I've taken that test a couple times because we evolve and we change. And that's the other piece of this is, if you are going to be connected to another person for an extended period of time, you have to give them space to grow, give them space to evolve. And with that evolution, there may not be the same connections. There may not be the same plugins that you used to have.
Mm-hmm.
So evolve with them, or you will see what we normally see, which is burnout or a lack of connection there. But when we get into those spaces of capability and the love languages, mine is quality time is my primary. I have all of them, just like with the zodiac signs. You're a piece of everybody, and all of that. And so mine's quality time. And I ended up in a situation with a person whose love language was acts of service. And it's not that I don't like doing for others, but you need that for me to love you. And it became this like I was incapable, almost incapable of doing it to serve somebody's highest experience of love. If it means, like, if I see something that you like, or I've thought of it, my Venus is in Virgo, so yeah, it's going to be constructive love. But to consistently, oh, your love language is washing the dishes, nah, but what if I don't feel like it today? It was kind of a weird concept, and a bit of a, like you said, it's a bit of, it raises the tension a little bit to come into that level of awareness. But at the end of the day, if you can't support yourself and love yourself to the fullness of what that means, and accept these different parts of you from other people and your own capabilities, how can you go into a connection expecting wholeness? How can you go into a connection that doesn't devolve into toxicity?
Well, and the problem that I see is there isn't a lot of avenue for us to have those conversations until there's a mishap.
Yep.
It's not on your Tinder profile. Oh, and my love language is, acts of service. So you can just be like, swipe left. Nope.
No.
No. Nope. And we're not talking about those when we have date face on and we're working to cultivate that relationship. So we don't find those things out until we're sussing it out through trial and error. And we realize that we're in over our head with some stupid acts of service situation. And then all of a sudden we're washing the dishes at 2 a.m. so somebody feels some kind of way,
Right.
And it's a sad situation to be at that point. And I'm not saying that bitterness out of experience. I say it
No.
out of seeing people go through this all the time, where they're not speaking the same language and the other person is just incapable of providing that. So you have to get into, what is your secondary language of love? You've got to be multilingual here, because I can't speak Russian and will not speak Russian.
Right. Right. I'm not going to learn. It's not going to,
Yeah.
the synapses are not going to fire for that at
Broken.
all.
Yep. Not going to happen. So it just comes back to the idea that anytime we meet somebody, no matter how carefully and scientifically that meeting is dialed in, we're still just rolling the dice.
Yep.
That there's going to be some nice compatibility there.
Absolutely. Or, daily Olympias with Katrina. Just Can I get a
Yeah.
package? Is there a package deal? No.
I'll put you on my calendar.
You know, it's when you talked about things sort of materializing once something's broken, a really great person back and shared a metaphor with me that they had learned recently, where it was oftentimes, and I'm hoping I'm not misquoting this. Oftentimes, we don't go and repair the bridge until somebody's fallen in the water. And I took that and I was like, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And having discussions around, well, but wait a minute, what about infrastructure? Like, don't you go back and you look at the bridge to see if there's any cracks in it? And it's like, no, you trust that you built it sturdy the first time. And
That's
then,
true. And
so,
yeah, and do we even look at the fact that there's a bridge half the time? I'm walking, it's solid.
right.
Okay.
And
Until
then
all of a sudden we're, up to our eyebrows in water, and then,
wait a minute.
oh
There was a
crap.
bridge under me, right?
Building bridges is not my love language, man.
And our beloved Gladys, I think this is a very Cancerian sentiment here. As Gladys says, it's okay to burn that fucker and not look back.
Sometimes you gotta, especially, damn it, if you are realizing that this just isn't something you can do, that the order is too tall. And that brings us back to that discussion of, it's not that one person is a bad person. It's not that, you need to distance from that person because they're toxic. It's a matter of recognizing when something's working, when it's not. And as we get, I'm sure we've all felt this, as we get older, that becomes a more critical discernment
Yeah,
to figure out who we can invest in for the long term and who's just energy drained, not because they're needy, but because the relationship is fundamentally broken in some way that it's leaking out everywhere.
absolutely. And we can dial this back to the productivity piece. The only way you're going to know these things is if you take time out. The moral of my story with regard to the productivity is that I significantly decreased my schedule because being as mucky as I was, facilitating at my normal level would not have served anyone. And so bringing that down, understanding that that is okay. If you're a healer out there thinking you have to be a slave to these things, you can't. And then when you have these moments where you take the time, you've scheduled it, like, hey, I'm going to check in with myself here. I had participated in a class where she was like, put your desires down in your calendar right now and keep that appointment with yourself. And when you do that, look at your life, and you might be a woo-woo person talking about, like productivity. I don't want to do that. Well, how do you want to feel? What do you want to feel? And then asking yourself, is this thing that I'm engaged in, work-wise, relationship, connections, whatever I'm doing, is it produce the results, the feeling results that I really want? And then from there saying, okay, the hard truth is no, it's not. And then maybe you have the question of, well, what am I getting out of it? Or I should probably start making arrangements to go left.
Right. And if
So
if it's the right time, we talked about how, what if you're trapped there? What if you can't have choices? My experience is that if your assessment is correct and you're really feeling like this is not where you need to be, then the universe will open up for you to have the opportunity. It's whether or not you step through that door when push comes to shove that's important. And so often I think that if it involves something or someone we really care about, we will often hesitate.
yeah,
And even if a perfect situation comes up, we're not out the door. We're standing there. Well, should I? Or what happens if? We just worry it to death.
right. And then bury yourselves under that worry. And
Absolutely.
then you go into spaces where you start checking in with other people. Is this the right thing? Is it? And they may, if they're your friends, they'll probably validate you. If they're real friends, they'll be like, like, let's talk about this, and then make some decisions together, or we'll hold space for whatever.
Speaking of friends, one of the things that I find really disheartening is when a relationship ends, and I'm not talking just romantic, but friendship relationships, any type of, even student relationship, any type of relationship ends, and it ends badly and it blows up and it gets really messy, and your friends come to you and say, "Oh, I never liked her anyway." And you're like, "Why didn't you tell me this 2 months ago?"
Right,
That would have
right,
been good information to have, because maybe I'm not seeing what I need to see.
right. Your hope has colorized everything. And we have these conversations and we circle back to different things. I remember giving a client some homework that talked about, why don't you outline what your ideal friendship looks like? Because the concern was a balance between giving and receiving. And these people sort of, I think, being sent into this individual's life to show them what's possible and to refine their choice and their desires. And then you have to get to a place of empowerment where you say, these are the kind of connections. And then, like you said, the universe meets you halfway. If you decide this is not the job, if you decide, again, I want all the positive things, I'm manifesting community, and that one person is not part of that structured system, what do you do next? Do you give up the dream for that one person or two?
Mm-hmm.
Or do you let the universe sort of, open the vacuum and the void, suck them out, and then be prepared to be caught by your actual community? A lot of times people
Mm-hmm.
don't make space for new things to come in. I don't know if you found that.
Oh, absolutely. People when things are going well, people don't like to rock the boat. Unfortunately, as humans, we only make change when there's pain.
Hmm.
And, if we put our hand on the stove and the stove isn't hot, we're not going to quickly pull our hands away. And so, what we tend to do is extend this idea of not rocking the boat, not making waves, not changing anything, to the point that it gets uncomfortable in a big way, because we're starting to say, well, maybe it's just me. Well, maybe I'm stupid for thinking this. Maybe I'm just being sensitive.
Or
And
judgy.
we turn into that frog in the pot, that the water's getting hotter and hotter and they won't jump out because they're not feeling the gradual change that's happening until they're boiling.
Yep.
And so we have to be able to constantly check in. How am I feeling? If I'm feeling off, why am I feeling off? We need to pay attention to how we feel when we walk away from somebody. Do we feel uplifted? Do we feel happy? Do we feel supported? Do we feel loved? Do we feel tired? Do we feel dismissed? Do we feel reprimanded? How do we feel when we're leaving that person? That'll tell us the value they have in our lives.
Absolutely. And realize that you don't have to, in all of the productivity conversation that we're having, if you aren't a calendar person, maybe you just do it for a couple weeks just to get into a habit.
Mm-hmm.
And then you can go back to your spontaneity. But don't get lost in the sauce, as they say. If it's not there, how will you know? And then you may even go back to your calendar and go, oh shit, I didn't realize as much, as Katrina was saying earlier in the broadcast. So between productivity, scheduling time for yourself in terms of self-care, the contracts and connections that you have, in order, and knowing, based on perhaps a productivity piece where you go and you reflect on yourself, on your connections, on how you feel, to know that some of these soul contracts are changing and evolving, and not necessarily in toxic ways, but just that there is a parting
Mm-hmm.
of paths. And then keeping in touch with you, connecting with yourself on deeper levels. I mean, by next week we should be good, right? Like, that's
Absolutely.
oh man, we've had some great sharing in the comment section. I hope that this video, this conversation has been beneficial to you all, And we love connecting with you on a weekly basis. I certainly love this broadcast. I know Katrina does. I love connecting with her and with you guys. And we hope to see you again next week. And again, Gladys said next week Mercury is going into retrograde. Do not invoke that energy in this space.
We're going to
I
try.
refuse.
We're going to do our best.
Whatever candles I gotta burn, ritual baths, you will see all the smoke in front of the camera just to displace. I hate Mercury retrograde. But I also love it for the reflective pieces, but the electronic mess ups are not fun. Neither is the traffic.
Nope.
So in any case, we love you all. Thank you for coming. Catch us on the replay. Leave us the comments. If you have something you want us to cover or talk about, we'd love to hear from you. You are our beloved community, and we'll see you next week.
See you next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody.